Today's Lunch and Learn is entitled The Silent Killer. If you look at this picture, you will notice that what we have is a desk, we have a computer, we have a person, and we have a chair. So of the four, what could be the silent killer? And the reality is it could be considered in some respects all four, but the main issue is the chair. Yeah, the chair has become a big issue for us. In fact, if you really want to see what we're doing to ourselves, we are becoming chiropractors' best friends. I mean, we are creating issues for ourselves and our health by simply spending way too much time in front of a screen, typing on a keyboard, and sitting on our ruckus, if you will, and not getting up and moving. The average Fitbit in this country is registering about 3,100 steps at best, and that's even with the error rates that are now found in those types of wearables. I mean, it is amazing that we just don't move anymore. In fact, today's whole presentation is about explaining to you what that means, what that's doing to our health, but more importantly, give you the understanding that you need to be conscious of this issue. Because if you're conscious about it, then there's something you can do about it. First, Americans spend on average more than 150 days per year in front of a screen. So there's 365 days in a year. We are talking about 150 24-hour days is how much the average American is spending in front of a screen. For those math geniuses out there, that's roughly 41% of our lives is spent every year looking at a screen of some type. That's TV, that is computer, and yes, your lovely cell phone. That's what we've done to ourselves. That's where we are now. And in fact, almost all of that time is spent on their ruckus. That's right. So when we are in front of those screens, almost inevitably, we are also sitting at the same time. So 150 days a year, 41% of our lives is spent sitting on our tush. Now think about that. This isn't why you're sleeping. This isn't why you're, taking a nap. This isn't why you're doing other things. This is simply the screen time that we spend sitting on our butts and paying attention to what's happening in front of us instead of getting out and actually living life. So what is that doing to us? Well, here's the reality. If you're an office worker, on average, you're spending roughly 20 hours a day sitting down. The average person in the U.S. is roughly 9.3 hours, and on weekends, we spend about 8 hours. So on the weekends, we actually get out and do something, but we still spend a lot of time sitting down. In fact, where we are now as a society is 80% of our jobs require no physical activity whatsoever. With the advent of mechanical processes, computers, technology, and other related tasks, most of the jobs that we have in the U.S. are all related to no physical activity required. And in fact, between 1980 and 2000, the increase in average daily sitting time went up 8%. Between 2000 and 2018, that number has more than tripled. We are headed to be a very sedentary society, as you will see. So, sitting so much should scare you. Well, when you actually look at the numbers and you break it down, this is talking about the average person with the average lifestyle. We spend roughly 21 hours a day being sedentary and 3 hours being active. Now, active just means we're up and moving. We're standing up. We're walking from the car to the office, or the office to the car, or the car to the house, or the house to the car. That's our activity. But the reality is over 80% of people don't get simply 20 minutes of walking in other words, exercise a day. And when you really break down and look at the numbers, what you see is we spend roughly 8 hours sleeping, 7.5 hours sitting at work, 1.5 hours watching TV, 1.5 hours of leisure time, which usually that leisure time is something in front of our smartphone, which is not making us smarter, I can tell you. Another hour and a half on our home computer, an hour eating, and 3 hours of standing or active movement. For those that are math people, 88% of our lives is spent being sedentary on average in the U.S. of our lives. So, 24 hours in a day, 365 days a year, averaging 21 hours a day, 88% of our lives is involved in not doing anything of an active basis. It's basically sitting down, doing something, or laying down and sleeping. That's where we are. That's where we are as Americans. So, how many U.S. employees are affected? Well, 86% of U.S. workers set for their entire workday. Think about it for a second. You wake up in the morning, you take a shower, so at least you're standing in that regard, getting ready for work. You go from your home to your car, where you spend commuting to your office, where you're sitting. You walk from the office, from the car to the office, and then you sit, usually for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and then go back into the car. Go back to the house, sit down to have dinner, sit down on your couch or favorite chair to watch TV, to get exhausted, to then lay down and go to sleep. That's the average day. But here's what you need to understand. Upon starting a new job that's desk-bound, the average person will gain 16 pounds within the first 8 months. Let that sit in for a second for all of those people that are, getting ready to enter the workforce, getting ready to graduate college and get your first job. Just realize the average person will gain 16 pounds within the first 8 months because they do not move anymore. That's just what we're doing to ourselves. So, the numbers are astounding. In fact, if you just stood, okay, so you get yourself a standing desk as opposed to a sitting desk, and you stood, you would burn on average 1,530 calories per day just from standing. That's it. This is, our basal metabolic rate, which we're going to get into earlier. And if you're sitting, you're only burning 1,176 calories. Your risk of cardiovascular disease would drop 50%. But here's the other thing. You will burn over a 1-year period on an average 8-hour workday 92,000 more calories. That is the equivalent of running 38 marathons a year, simply by changing from the chair to standing desk. That's really that simple. People talk about all the time how health and wellness is difficult, how it's, something that's challenging. And hey, I'm here to tell you it is. I was at one point an extremely heavy person, over 300 pounds in my life. But there are some simple things, simple changes that we can make, and this is one of them. If you can just, create a standing desk and stand, you can burn an extra 354 calories a day in the average 8-hour workday. So why is this a problem? Well, sitting all day increases our risk of multiple health concerns that you should be aware of. 1, cancer, obesity, musculoskeletal problems, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, early death. But here's what you need to know. Here's where I'm talking to ladies specifically, and I have no idea why the science popped out this way, but I thought I would at least tell you guys what it is. Women who spent 6+ hours a day sitting were 94% more likely to die during the study that was done here than women who did not sit more than 6 hours a day. So it's just, and physical activity didn't really matter. And of course, men, 48% more likely to die than those who were physically active. It is just an astounding result of this study that was done, where it looked at people that had this sedentary work life and those that had an active work life. And active didn't mean exercised on a regular basis. This, you can have a full exercise regimen, but if you have an office clerical job and you sit more than 6 hours a day, this study applies to you, because they did not take cardiovascular effort into consideration. This was just how many hours a day you sit for your job versus those who actually get up, stand up, move around, and things of that nature, or had a standing desk. 94% more likely to die during the study period. So what happens? When you're sitting down, here are the common conditions that we suffer from. So if you're suffering from any of these issues, if these are something that you're having to see a massage therapist, a chiropractor, or some other type of medical treatment as a result of, you might want to consider whether or not it's directly related to our chair at our office. So neck and back pain, this is common. People are hunched over, they're rolled over. It's a really bad situation. Heart disease, stroke, greater increase in risk there from sitting too much. Degenerative disc disease, that's right. That low back, because we are not intended to angle, slouch, and put our bodies in those types of conditions. Diabetes and cancer. Hip pain is a big issue because we're not using our hips. We're not rotating our hips. We're not moving around. Muscle stiffness, especially behind the knees, as you'll see, And then, of course, poor balance and mobility because we also lose blood flow into our legs and feet. So, let's see what the long-term effect is. Workers who remain sedentary for 10 years double their risk of developing colon cancer. Colon cancer in this country is a killer. I think if I remember right, there's only a 7% survival rate of colon cancer. Main reason was it's non-symptomatic. It's one of those things that does not have symptoms, and by the time it does develop a symptom, usually it's late stage 3 or early stage 4, and very little can be done about it. But sitting disease, as it's now been called, affects everyone who sits, regardless of whether that person is healthy weight or whether or not they smoke. That's just the reality of where we are. It does not matter. You are affected if you sit on a regular basis. Even with regular exercise, you still are going to shorten your lifespan. It's just the reality of where we are. It's just it's one of those unfortunate things. And of course, employees who sit for more than 11 hours every day increase their risk of death in the next 3 years by 40%. So if you're one of those jobs, especially the job that I used to have, I always like to say I'm a recovering lawyer, but definitely sit for more than 11 hours a day. I was always running the risk of having a greater risk of death than my counterparts who didn't. So, what other stats and figures should we be looking at? Well, here you go. This is all from the World Health Organization report. So WHO put this report out. So there's a lot of really good information in here to go through. But first and foremost, sitting more than 6 hours a day decreases the lifespan of men by 20% and women by 40%. Think about that for a second. What if you told somebody they could live 40% longer than their current lifespan simply by not sitting 6 hours a day? Getting up, moving, being active, standing up when they can. This is from the American Cancer Society. It's just an astounding thing. It is a simple thing that we can change, and there's something that we can do about it. Smoking one cigarette reduces lifespan by 11 minutes, while watching TV for 1 hour reduces our lifespan by 22 minutes. I guess this is where you get sometimes they say watching TV is worse than smoking. In some respects, I guess you can say it is. I'm not saying that smoking is good for you. In fact, a lot of people that smoke actually smoke and watch TV, so I'm not sure what the number is for that one. But the reality is watching TV can be just as bad for you. So if you're one of those people who judges people who are smoking or dealing with that addiction, you might want to look in the mirror first to determine whether or not you may be doing something that is twice as bad. Other things to consider is you have a 21% greater chance of contracting breast cancer if you sit more than 6 hours a day, 27% more increase or complaints have increased with regard to diabetes. Heart disease complaints increase by 30%, and of course digestive tract cancer increases by 25%. And what are the other health risks sitting more time in a day? You decrease your good cholesterol. You decrease the utilization of your calorie rate. In other words, your basal metabolic rate will drop as a result of your sitting too much. You increase or decrease your insulin level. You increase the risk of obesity, backache problems, and of course kidney problems as well. And it is killing us. In fact, 1 in 10 premature deaths are the result of inactivity. That is the equivalent of as many as smoking. So let's let that set in for a second. Right now in this country, inactivity is just as deadly as smoking. That's how bad it has gotten. That's why you've seen some reports, and we're actually going to talk about this in just a second, whether or not sitting is the new smoking. Where that comes from is this stat right here, that 1 in 10 premature deaths are the result of inactivity, and of course that's basically the same as smoking. In fact, in 2008, we had 5.3 million, roughly, of the 57 million deaths attributable to inactivity. Primary causes being heart disease, type 2 diabetes, breast cancer, and colon cancer, all related to people that sit too much. But here's the thing. If we could just have a 10% reduction in inactivity, or another way of saying that, a 10% increase in activity, we could save, on average, 533,000 lives or deaths per year. We could prevent these. 25% increase in activity or reduction in inactivity, there could be 1.3 million less deaths per year in the U.S. In fact, lack of exercise worldwide causes about 6% of the heart disease issues, 7% of type 2 diabetes, and 10% of breast and colon cancers. That's where we are. Now, sitting is the new smoking. I've told you now where that comes from. This was something that came out in mass media. A lot of people grabbed onto it and really touted it and really started talking about it. But the reality is, when you jump into the numbers, you can see why it's said. And, there were some people saying, oh, this is overblown and it's not as bad as you think. But as we've seen today, it is pretty bad, and you now know where the number comes from. But here's where a lot of those stats, where the source of those came from. So is sitting more unhealthy than smoking? Well, 1 hour of sitting is as unhealthy as smoking 2 cigarettes. That's just kind of where you are. 1 hour of sitting decreases your life expectancy by 21.8 minutes. We always say 22 minutes because it's just rounding up. But 1 hour of sitting decreases life expectancy by 22 minutes. So think about that. Think about your favorite TV show. Okay, this is a way to equate it in your brain. The whole idea behind these lunch and learns is to give you the information so you can make informed decision. So how much do you really like that new TV show that came on? And the reason why I ask is because every time you watch it, it costs you 22 minutes of your life. Think about that for a second. Is the hour-long show worth it? Now, I'm not saying, throw the TV out the window and never watch it again. I'm not saying that. That may be a bit extreme. But what I am saying, if we can equate our inactivity to the cause or the result, I've always said, if we treated our life expectancy like we do our bank account and understand that our decisions and our activity or inactivity will either increase the amount of that account or decrease the amount of that account, and we could check the balance on a regular basis, people would probably make a different decision. Of course, men with 23 hours of sedentary activity per week are 64% more likely to die of heart disease. Guys, just pay attention there. And it only takes about 90 minutes for blood flow in the backs of our knees to slow by 50%. Remember earlier I said the back of the knees was the biggest issue that people have. A lot of people have knee aches, knee pains, stairs are becoming a problem. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we are sitting way too long. What can we do? Well, first, you can try to get your 10,000 steps a day. That's a good goal. Scientifically, there's really no basis in it, but other than, you'd probably be moving more than 3.5 times the average person in the U.S. You can stretch your legs every 30 to 40 minutes. Set something on your watch or set something on your wearable or put something on your computer to remind you every 30 to 40 minutes just to stand up, stretch, move around. You want to stretch your wrist, roll your shoulders, lift your feet. You want to roll your back, put yourself into a good posture position. You can do that. You're going to burn 60 more calories per hour by standing and move around. That is healthier than 32 straight minutes of exercise. You're going to get more out of that than if you went to the gym for 32 minutes. It's just the reality. You have to get up and move around. You're going to get more out of it if you get up and do it more often rather than just do it in one short little burst. I'm not telling you don't exercise. Don't take that from this. What I'm saying is the beneficial effect of getting up on a regular basis, moving around and stretching your body is greater than if you just do it once a time a day. How can employers help fight this? Well, standing workstations. 67% of employees say they would like the option to stand. I will tell you it is a transition. I do have a standing desk here at the office. It does take a while to get used to. There are some things that you can do to help with that. There are some like standing pads and things like that you can put under the desk to take off some of the ill effect, but that is something you can do. Encourage employees to take their breaks, walk around the office, to actually get up and move. Teach the employees stretches that they can do at their desk. It doesn't take long. Like I said, we're talking 2 minutes. Just get up and stretch. Allow stability balls at the office. We have stability balls all over the place here at ID Life. In fact, I'm sitting on one right now. The whole reason why is you can't slouch in a stability ball. If you do, you fall. It's just the thing about a ball. You can wear fitness trackers. Get competitions in the office. Watch your steps. Make sure that you're moving. Check your heart rate. Understand if you have the option of adding, a reminder to get up and move. And then, of course, educate the employees about sitting disease and why we need to change our behaviors before it's too late. All right, public service announcement time. There are 2 things that I want to talk about that are a little bit unrelated to sitting, but they are connected. And these are kind of PSA type statements because You need to know about them because they're not necessarily something that justifies a full lunch and learn, but they are definitely something that you need to consciously be aware of. And it starts with this one. The amount of pressure or pounds of pressure that we are putting on our necks as a result of looking at those wonderful little smartphones. See, these are the angles of descent of your neck and the amount of poundage or the effect that it's having on your cervical spine as a result. So if you basically look at your phone with your neck straight up, guess what? It's only 10 to 12 pounds. I mean, that's basically you're holding up your head. By a simple 15-degree look down, now you've added 27 pounds of pressure to that cervical spine. 30 degrees, you're at 40 pounds. 45 degrees, you're at 49 pounds. And at 60 degrees, you are 60 pounds of pressure on that cervical spine. You want to know why you have so many headaches, neck aches, shoulder pains, and the like? Think about the angle that your head is at the next time you are spending looking at that phone. The average person is going to spend more than 2 hours a day reading something on their smartphone. That's it, 2 hours a day. That can be reading who's calling them to take the call, and then the question is, how are they holding the phone when they do have that, because they're probably tilting their head to the side. Is it reading messages, text messages, social media, emails, etc.? The reality is this: we spend a lot of time on these things, and we are unconsciously creating issues and problems for ourselves that historically we've never seen. Again, these are massage therapists and chiropractors' best friends. We are having to see them in record numbers because of simple little modifications that we are making to our daily routine that, compounded over time, result in some pretty severe issues for us. So PSA number 1. PSA number 2. I've traveled around the country and told people that 33% of our children in this country are overweight. Just 20 years ago, it was only 8%, but now we're at 33% are overweight. And I've told parents, I said, I am intentionally going to convict you that instead of blaming the video game, think about the next time you want to argue that they grabbed the joystick, think that maybe the reason was because the remote control was taken. And then I found this cartoon in preparing for this presentation, and it is exactly what we have been talking about for a long time now. It says the rise of obesity in children is making people ask why. Well, if you look at the picture, dad is sitting on the couch with, beer in hand and remote in the other hand, and kid is sitting on the bed with, his joystick in hand and his Coke in the other hand. There is a direct correlation here. It's not the video game's fault. It's our kids are going to do what we do. They are not going to do what we say. We have to model the right behavior. If we want to change them, we have to start by changing ourselves. Again, not directly related to the sitting disease, but it kind of is directly related. The best thing that we can do is get up and move. Get our kids involved with something that we are doing. The best type of exercise is the one that you're willing to do. Whether or not it's just walking the dog, walking in the park, getting out in nature, getting outside the house, whatever it can be, just get active with your children, spend some time, leave the cell phones at home. I promise everything will still be there when you get back, and spend some time talking to our families. It's just, public service announcement for the day. Just one of those things when I saw this cartoon, I figured, this was a good time to reiterate a point that we've been trying to make for a long time. At ID Life, we're here to help. It's all about diet and lifestyle. It's all about the lifestyle and diet choices that we make that create the nutritional gaps that we have. And all of that coupled together actually results in our healthy living. That's what it's all about, is we provide you the information, you make an informed choice, and understand that the choices that you make have consequences, either positive and or negative. Or again, think about that lifespan bank account. Are the decisions you making today making a deposit, or are they making a withdrawal? Because if you think about it that way, if you think about that favorite TV show of mine just cost me 22 minutes of my life, the question is The Bachelor really worth it? Trust me, I've had to endure that the last couple of days with never seen before footage and all this other stuff, as I'm basically complaining to my wife, here we go again, they just duped her into watching an extra night. But the reality is this: we are making decisions every day. It is affecting our health, and there are some small, simple changes that we can make that can improve that. And that's kind of what we're here to help you with.